everybody. This is Dr. Lori Shemek.
And I'm Omar Cumberbatch. You're listening to This Podcast Burns Fat. Hey, Lori, how are you today?
Hi, Omar. I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
Very, very good.
Yeah.
I'm getting ready to go to Jamaica.
Oh my gosh, I would love that. Oh, you're so lucky.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, no, it's well needed to hopefully get a lot of
Yes.
relaxation in there and just get some vitamin D and some
Oh
ocean
my
water.
gosh.
That's one of the things that I'm looking forward to. So I'm very
That,
excited.
well, don't think about us poor humans back here
I'll do my best.
while you're
I'm always
relaxing on the
concerned.
beach. Yeah, I know you are. That's
But
funny.
yeah, no, but yeah, I
Uh,
definitely appreciate getting today's guest show released and
yeah.
everything right before, I get out on that plane and travel because I think this is going to be a great show for all people who are dealing with metabolic issues during menopause because it's not easy, right? And
Mm-hmm.
specialists like today's guests are really, really awesome at breaking it down, even the hormonal issues that come across and be specific because she does dive into a lot of different angles that we may not have heard of before. And I'm just
Yeah.
skipping all around and into the show. Her name is Stephanie Fusnick. And I was just like so excited to just get all her information out there because she
Yeah.
is a powerhouse in the industry. And I think the guests are really going to enjoy her.
Yeah. And if you're interested in I mean, if you have an interest in perimenopause or menopause, no matter who you are, you will find her very interesting. So we did. So I think you all too.
For sure. So let's jump into the show.
Okay.
Hey, Stephanie, how are you today? Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Nice to have you, Stephanie. Thank you for stopping by.
Of course, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to share you with our audience. So I want to let you get a little bit of the background story out the way and then paint this picture of what you're always out there trying to address in the menopause, perimenopause world. And yeah, just want to give you a chance to let us get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, so I started my journey with health and fitness pretty early. I always thought I was going to be a phys ed teacher or a coach of some sort, like sports wise. But once I got into university and I started working with more younger athletes and things like that, realized that was not the not the course that I wanted to take. But fell in love with chronic disease pretty quickly. I was a personal trainer at the university in my hometown, and I loved it because everybody wanted to work with athletes. So I got my pick of like cancer patients and osteoporosis and arthritis and diabetes and anything that you can think of that was chronic disease-esque. That was my jam. So got into exercise therapy, did that, got my master's, started working for the health region, running all the exercise for chronic disease exercise management programs. Loved that. Then COVID hit, was not loving it so much anymore. I felt like I kind of hit a ceiling where I couldn't really help my clients in the way that I wanted. So I was doing some nutrition coaching on the side. I got my manual osteopathic exercise therapy degree, was working in some gyms, and eventually I opened my own practice, working as an osteo. And I had a training studio there. I had massage therapists working with me, and nutrition was always something I kind of did on the side. So I was spending a lot of time with clients who were, 250 pounds, 300 pounds, things like that. And the whole eat less, move more thing really wasn't working. So I dove deep into metabolism and how all those things worked and learned a lot. And then I started working with women who were 45 plus, and it just seemed like the rules didn't quite apply. They didn't get results as easily. And I was like, what the heck is going on? So I really got into the perimenopause, menopause world, did a ton of work in there, certifications, all that kind of stuff. And now that's really what I do because, again, you talk to women and it's eat less, move more. Like that's how you lose weight. You have to, do more of that over and over and over again. And again, it just wasn't really working. So that's really what I've dedicated my life to. And I closed my clinic and I do this full time, just working with menopausal women.
That's fascinating. Yeah, that's really, you've taken a deep dive into what happens after 40, right? and sometimes late 30s. So right now, so what you really work solely with perimenopause and menopausal and
Yep.
postmenopausal.
So anywhere from perimenopause and onwards, where we
Mm-hmm.
start seeing hormonal issues, but sometimes even sooner. Like I've worked with women, like in their 30s or even 20s that are having some pretty severe hormonal
Mm-hmm.
symptoms and been on birth control for a long time and things like that. So we really like to take a really hormone approach is kind of where we start. But I mean, the majority of our women are obviously we focus on perimenopause and menopause. But we do have some younger women in our community too that,
Mm-hmm.
just seems like nothing really works anymore.
Yeah, and it's kind of like if you're deficient in a vitamin, say vitamin D in your body, you're going to feel some effect from it.
Mhm.
And it's very similar because when there are things we need in our body to make us run, our bodies run properly, we don't have it, then things go sideways. So, what are some of those things that you see? And also, too, there's a parallel, isn't there, with a lack of hormones to chronic disease, metabolic health?
Mhm. Oh, big time, big time. So typically the symptoms that we see are like women are going to come in complaining of exhaustion. They're very tired. They almost lose like their zest for life in terms of the things they used to enjoy, which is really sad. They're like the things that I used to love to do, I just don't really like it anymore. And I feel like my workouts aren't as good. I'm not getting the results that I want in the gym despite working really hard. The weight gain around the middle is obviously one of the most common complaints that we talk about and hear about. But you get the hot flashes, the night sweats, the irritability, the brain fog. You
Hmm.
have like all these things where all of a sudden you're bloating and having food sensitivities that you never used to have. And you kind of feel crazy sometimes. And you just kind of feel lost and overwhelmed and the hopelessness that we hear a lot of women talk about, it's honestly heartbreaking. And again, the thing that they hear from people is eat less, move more, eat less, move more.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
that's not the full picture because we know that once you start going through perimenopause and menopause and our estrogen levels start to decline, there's some pretty significant changes that happen. Like we have a much harder time building and maintaining muscle mass. We're going to see that blood sugar control really takes a hit. If we're in a high stress state, we know we're going to see even worse production of our sex hormones, which lead to more of those symptoms that we're experiencing. We're going to see thyroid function take a hit. We're going to see gut health and liver function start to decrease too. And just adding more stress to the system of eat less, move more, eat less, move more just makes you feel worse. You're not getting anywhere. And it can actually make all those symptoms and actually make the root cause worse, making it obviously very hard to lose weight, let alone feel like you're human again.
And this is so important what you're saying because many people do not connect the dots, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's like this whole work harder hustle culture where it's been very glorified of
Mm-hmm.
work really hard, and if you work really hard it's going to happen. You see posts of like people being like, well, you're just not in a calorie deficit, or well, you're probably not tracking your food right, or well, you're not trying hard enough. I'm like, that's
You're
not
not
helpful
fasting long
information.
enough.
Oh man, it's just wild. It drives me crazy.
I know. Fast more and eat less.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
wild.
no, it really is. So, Stephanie, what would be like the primary drivers as far as our hormones go? You mentioned estrogen. Are there any hormones that are at play as well?
Oh yeah, there's so many. Like progesterone will be a really big one. Um, because well, I'll start with cortisol first because that's our stress hormone. It goes up when we're in times of stress, but people don't realize what a huge impact cortisol has on our body. So it's supposed to be elevated and then come back down, but in today's day and age, let's face it, we went through COVID and we went through financial stressors and uncertainty, and then we had a lot of loss and grief, and maybe we're taking care of sick parents, and we have a lot more stress than we like clue into. And we think we're quote unquote handling it well, right? But people don't realize the process that's going on in their body, regardless of how good they think they're dealing with it, or, oh, it's not as bad as it could be, or so and so has it worse. It doesn't matter. So, what we see is this increase in cortisol, and it significantly decreases our ability to produce progesterone. Like, if in the presence of cortisol, progesterone can't be produced because it steals the precursor that you need to produce progesterone. And when progesterone goes down, we start seeing some like PMS type symptoms. We see like a sudden increase on the scale from fluid retention because progesterone will definitely do that for you. But when we see like a sudden, typically like a really sudden increase in your weight, progesterone has something to do with this because it's supposed to decrease slowly, but in a time of stress, it's like, okay, our body starts producing less progesterone, and then we have stress and it just tanks. And progesterone is going to be more predominantly produced in our adrenals, where cortisol is produced when we're in times of like menopause, where our ovaries aren't going to be producing that anymore. But if our adrenals are so stressed out and we're working them so hard to produce cortisol, other things can't be produced properly. And then we see a decrease in our testosterone levels, estrogen levels come into play, progesterone. We see an increase in androgens. We see an increase in insulin resistance. Like there's all these other hormones that come into play, and people will be like, well, that hormone doesn't directly impact your metabolism or how many calories your body burns at rest. And it's like, yes, but it impacts your ability to put on muscle, to have energy, to feel good. And you can't tell me if you don't feel good and you have no energy and you're pushing in the gym and not seeing results. Like, of course, it's going to be hard for you to want to be motivated to like try and eat healthy. You're going to say, screw it, I just want pizza, or your body's screaming for nutrients and it's screaming for energy, that those cravings get pretty unbearable. And it's not just a lack of willpower, it's your hormones are literally like not where they're supposed to be. And your body is screaming for help, and it will take it in any way, shape, or form, whether it's chocolate or whatever that might be.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, there's so many symptoms with perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause too, even. For example, for our audience, testosterone, right? Many women shy away from testosterone. They're afraid of hormones in general. But what are the benefits of having a balanced level, adequate level of testosterone?
Oh, testosterone is huge. This is something that we actually see because technically, actually, during perimenopause and menopause, when estrogen and progesterone start to go down, testosterone is actually supposed to increase slightly to kind of help buffer stress and help increase our muscle mass when estrogen comes down. Like it kind of starts helping out a bit more. What we actually see is some women's testosterone levels are drastically low, like so low. And trying to get a doctor to test them nowadays seems to be like a nightmare, like trying to pull teeth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wild to me because I mean, think about like men who are low in testosterone, like they can't put on muscle mass. Typically, libido is not going to be great. Like you have all these like negative side effects, right? It happens
Mm-hmm.
for women too. Low libido, low energy, can't put on muscle mass. But yet people don't want to address that. And there's actually been a link in a couple studies lately that show um, a pretty strong relationship between testosterone and insulin resistance. So you actually have more poor blood sugar control when in the absence of testosterone. So there's a lot of things that's going to benefit not just for your well-being and quality of life, but also like your health as well. And the fact that like nobody tests this is insane. And yes, resistance training can absolutely help improve testosterone levels, but if you're not eating enough, if you're super stressed out and you're doing too much exercise, that's too much stress on your system, which will actually drop your
Mm-hmm.
testosterone levels. But people, again, like it's not talked about enough, which is crazy.
I think part of it is because people are so afraid of hormones to even like touch it, right? Touch it with a
Mhm.
10-foot pole. And when in fact, it's really what keeps us alive and vibrant and healthy.
Exactly. And like if you don't want to take hormone replacement therapy, sure, that's fine. Like everyone has their preferences, right? But
Hmm.
I think being aware that the very things that you are doing to try and improve your muscle mass or, try and get your energy up is is not actually helping. Like if you're not having carbohydrates, if you're skipping meals and you're not eating enough and you're doing a bunch of cardio, testosterone is just going to continue to tank. But people are so afraid to take hormone replacement therapy, or they're so
Hmm.
scared to eat carbs because that's the scariest thing that we can do nowadays, apparently. Like it's crazy.
It is. It is.
So, Steph, you said muscle mass a bunch of times here. So, I'm curious your position, and then you also mentioned hormone therapy. So, maybe we'll spin back to that a little bit later, at least to get your idea of your position on it. But do you think weight training, resistance training is more important than cardio during this period?
100%. So people like get mad at me sometimes because I push this so hard. But like, can cardio have benefits? Absolutely. Like there's like mental health benefits, there's the cardiovascular benefits. But I mean, studies have shown too that like with resistance training, you can improve your cardiovascular system.
Hmm.
Like that's why it's like a part of the cardiac rehab programs now that you see, like it's a very important part and it never used to be, due to those recommendations and changes. studies and such, but doing resistance training is so incredibly important for a number of reasons. So we know that once you hit this time in your life, having muscle mass is hard to maintain. Estrogen goes down, so we become more catabolic, which means our body wants to break down muscle for energy. We don't want to lose muscle mass because muscle mass is so important for improving your insulin sensitivity, so blood sugar control, quality of life in general, right? Like we know that if you fall and have a hip fracture, your life expectancy decreases by 7 years, which is insane. So not only will it keep you healthy that way, it's also what makes you look fit and toned, but increases your, what do you call it? Your metabolism. Like muscle burns a lot of calories at rest. The more muscle you have, the more calories you can burn. And that means you can eat more food and live like a human being. Like this is super, super important. And you cannot build muscle mass unless you're resistance training properly and consistently. Like it's very hard. And it's also important to know that if you're not having carbohydrates, if you're fasting all the time, if you're skipping meals, you're eating too low calorie, you're doing a bunch of cardio, all those things send a signal to your body that, oh, we're not getting enough energy in. We have to decrease our energy out. So it changes things hormonally inside your body, but also your body pares down muscle mass. So you might be killing yourself in the gym, not eating much food, you dropped your carbs, you're fasting, but you're actually going to be seeing a decrease in your muscle mass because you're not giving your body what it needs to build and maintain it. And then you're already at that hormonal like disadvantage. So like it's so, so important. So like put down the pink weights. You don't need those little 2-pound weights. Like challenge yourself,
just don't
get
touch them.
stronger. Yeah. Like they're just there for show.
They're not doing anything really. They really aren't. Yeah. So back to hormone therapy is there are some really serious, impressive benefits, powerful from taking hormone therapy, from testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone.
Yes. Yeah. But it's some people, I mean, obviously some people can't take it due to like cancer diagnosis or risks and things like that, right? And some people are very sensitive. It depends on the type of hormone replacement therapy you're taking as well. So like, for example, progestin versus like bioidentical progesterone, two very different things.
And I'm talking about bioidentical.
Yeah. So like, because a lot of people, a lot of doctors actually still prescribe like the HRT, that's the classic, like the progestin and stuff, which can actually make things so much worse for women. Like I've heard of women going on birth control and progestin where it's like the anxiety they experience is like insane and they're so emotional and they see the weight gain and all these other things. So I like obviously get tested. I think that's the most important part. I think people hand it out a little bit too freely, in my opinion. And like almost guess, which to me is like, it's crazy. Like anyone off the street could just do the same thing, which I think is wild.
That's horrible. I can't believe they're not getting tested.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy the amount of women that I talk to who get put on replacement therapy and do not get tested. Because I'm like, oh, what were your levels? And they're like, I don't know. They said I likely have this and they gave me this. And I'm like, are you serious? Like that's ethically, I don't know how that is allowed. Like it blows my mind.
That's crazy because you don't want too much and you don't want too little, right? So we want to get an idea of where you are.
Yeah. And like dosage will make a big difference in like symptoms and stuff as well. Because even on bioidentical, like if you get too much or too little, it's a lot. Like I had a woman that I was talking to actually just yesterday and her testosterone levels are through the roof. And her doctor's still insisting, oh, let's just do another cycle and see how you feel. And it's like, no, like it is so high. Just blows my mind. She's like, I don't feel right. Like I just feel more angry all the time. I'm like, okay, like no one's forcing you to take it. Like if you feel like this isn't right for you, voice that, stop taking it, like get a second opinion, get the doses changed. Like, unfortunately, a lot of people have to doctor hop quite a bit to find the right person to listen to them or, you know, that change their doses a bit more because some people just won't, which again, to me, I don't know. I just don't understand how we got to this point, to be honest.
Well, I think there was a large study that came out, I can't remember how long ago, but they stopped the study because women were experiencing heart attacks. It was estrogen and it was from horse mare urine. Okay. And so they stopped the study and they put out a notice saying, if you're taking this, get off it. You know, they were really worried for women who were taking it. Well, that study turned out to be flawed. And it's been decades of women being afraid of hormones because of this study. I wish I had more information, more particulars on it, but that was how it all started. And bioidentical hormone therapy is actually healthy,
Mhm.
and it's not, you know, um, horse urine,
Yeah, no.
for
And
lack of
like,
a better word.
yeah, and I always tell people like if it's going to improve how you're feeling, like if you can sleep better, like if it's going to improve your quality of life, try it. And the worst thing that happens is you don't like it, and then you can change the dosage or
Mm-hmm.
try a different type. But it really does come down to like personal preference, right? Because I think the stress of like going on something that you don't feel super confident in, I mean, that increases your stress response and a bunch of other things, right? So I'm like, just like take your time with it, do some research, try it. If you don't like it, come off of it. There's lots of other things that we can do to improve things. Like most of the clients that we work with, I would say half of them are on HRT, half of them are not. And like by making sure you're eating enough food, it is wild how much your symptoms can improve. Like that's always the most common things we hear is like, I cannot believe how much better my energy and my sleep is in just like 6 weeks. And I'm like, that's what carbs and calories do. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's dive into that because I kind of feel like we skipped diet right off the bat and kind of dove into so many different other topics. Like, what is an ideal diet that you would recommend to your clients when they're going through this phase?
Yeah, so the thing is, it's going to depend on the person, which like everyone hates that answer because they're like, just tell me what to eat. And I'm like, well,
Mm.
it depends, right? So, depending on how much stress you've had in your life, that's going to be one of the biggest factors. How much you've dieted for is really going to dictate like how much you need to eat and like increasing that slowly. Because like I would say 95% of the women that I talk to are needing to do a reverse diet of some sort, get up to maintenance appropriately before they can even go into any sort of fat loss phase. And they need to feel better first, because let's face it, if you don't feel good and your body isn't feeling great and not functioning properly, like good luck losing weight. That's just not going to happen. So typically what we do is we want to get most women to stop fasting, to be honest, because it's a very big kick right now. And can fasting work for people? Yes, but if it was going to work for you and it's not working right now, it's not going to suddenly start working. And you need to be aware that like skipping meals and not eating is a stress on your body. And depending on your specific history and everything like that, your body might not tolerate that well. So typically we start with making sure women are having breakfast. We want protein and carb at all your breakfasts. We want to make sure you're not having coffee on an empty stomach. We are making sure we're having meals throughout the day. So ideally lunch and supper as well. Maybe you have some snacks in there, pre and post workout snacks too. But protein and carbs at every single meal. And people are like astounded by that. And then we also encourage women to have a bedtime snack to help bring their cortisol levels down before bed, to increase their melatonin, to help stabilize blood sugars throughout the night. And that ends up being like a really huge impact on women as well, because we all know that like that's a story you hear. I haven't slept well since my kids were born, or
Mm-hmm.
so much of work since I hit perimenopause and menopause. And people don't realize how much food and energy intake is going to make such a huge difference. But I mean, you're aiming for 80% whole foods, you're having carbs at every meal, you're incorporating your veggies, getting enough protein in. That should be at every meal and snack as well. And it sounds so simple. And it sounds like not cool or sexy or like a fancy diet, right? But the basics are going to help improve your hormone profile. What that like actual amount looks like is going to vary person to person, obviously. But the more active that you are, the more stressed out that you are, the worse energy and sleep that you're experiencing, the more carbohydrate that you're going to need. And again, that's like the scariest thing that you can take to a woman, like tell a woman, right? Is to eat
Right.
carbs. But it's insane, like just how much better women feel and like function better. And it's just honestly just like if I could tell every woman one thing, it'd be like, eat your freaking carbs. Like it will change everything for you.
Yeah, I know.
Just-
I can only imagine how hard of a sell that is. But I
yeah.
do want to just ask a quick question of whether or not you have any beliefs in uptake of fats. Like, is that something that you didn't mention that specifically? What's your perspective on like fat?
Yeah. So you still need fats in your diets. I mean, that's what hormones are built from is cholesterol, right? So you do need to have adequate fat intake in your diet. I don't push it a ton because it's very, very easy in this day and age to get fat in your diet. I mean, you're going to find it in dressings, in dairy, like you're going to find it in nuts and seeds, avocado, like everyone loves avocado, super easy to get fats in there. You're going to get it in like your protein sources from like animal products and things like that. Like it's not hard to get your fat intake in. Like you don't have to try and you'll still hit your targets. Like you would have to be pretty purposeful to not have fat to be eating that low of an intake, because it does naturally just pop up everywhere. So it's not something I typically challenge a lot of women to reach because that's not really an issue literally ever, to be honest.
Although some women are still with the low fat era, some
Oh yeah.
older women, and so they purposely don't reach for the fat, you know.
Yeah, it's just a lot less common, I find, especially with the big
Hmm.
like avocados and nuts and seeds right now. There's just such a huge push for that, which is great. Like that's awesome. But I mean, people don't realize how calorie dense and how high in fat those are. So it's very easy and they're not as filling, right? Whereas like carbohydrates are they're gonna fill you a bit more up, especially with like fiber. If you think of like beans and stuff versus, a quarter cup of almonds or a couple slices of cheese.
Hmm.
It's just a lot easier to get in. But again, women will actively like avoid carbs pretty heavily. So it takes a lot of like talking about it, educating it about it, giving them different options, wean them into like having a piece of bread because that's super scary. So it's like, okay, what's less scary, rice or a sweet potato? What are we starting first? So it's just slowly moving that needle.
That's exactly how you change to a healthier life.
Hmm.
It's slow steps, you know.
Oh yeah.
That's how I did it. Just slowly changing, transforming.
Yeah, and that's the thing is people do things too quickly, too much, too fast, and
Hmm.
it's like you don't even know what's helping, what's not helping, and you won't stick to it, right? Like that's not
Hmm.
realistic. So it's learning, okay, if I'm going to have my treats, which you're obviously going to have, when's the best time to have them? Okay, before a workout, so you utilize that sugar in your bloodstream, or you're having it after a well-balanced meal, so you're not having the blood sugar spike. Like
That's great.
it's
Yeah.
just learning how to eat and pair things. Like you're not necessarily taking out a bunch of stuff. It's let's fill in the gaps. How do you naturally eat? Let's help you like make some better choices. Maybe we're adding some things in. Maybe we're changing your food timing a little bit, but we want you to eat the way that you're eating and we just help you fill in the gaps because if you're overhauling everything and you can't have meals with your family, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, yeah. It's not good for your personal life. You mentioned that not being hungry in the morning is a sign you're running on cortisol.
Mhm.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so typically with a normal cortisol curve, our stress hormone, it's going to be highest in the morning, and then we want to see it dip down in the evening. That's how we like get ourselves to sleep. Then it'll start to come up over the nighttime, and once it peaks, that's when you wake up. So we, again, like I mentioned earlier, with the cortisol levels, we want to make sure that we are keeping them so they're not super high. We don't want them to be high for so long, then your body can't produce any, because we know it's going to, again, tank your hormones. It's going to affect your blood sugar, your thyroid function, your gut health, your liver, your energy, your mood, all the things. So what we typically see is women won't eat breakfast and you're not hungry because you're running on the stress hormones. So what cortisol actually does is it will actually take like amino acids and other fuel sources in your body, like protein, muscle, all that kind of stuff, and actually turn it into usable sugar in your liver and then put that into your bloodstream to provide you with energy. And then insulin will come up to try and utilize that energy, take it where it needs to be. If you're not feeding yourself, cortisol will just keep doing that. It'll just keep creating sugar from muscles and protein and other areas in your body. Put that into your bloodstream, insulin goes up, and then this cycle just keeps going until you actually eat something and cortisol doesn't have to do that anymore. So then what happens is we're not having breakfast. That increases your cortisol, just keeps going up, right? Like it's just keeping up to try and provide you with energy throughout the day. Then we're having caffeine on an empty stomach. Caffeine's also going to increase our cortisol. Caffeine doesn't actually provide you with energy. It just prevents you from feeling tired, which a lot of people don't realize. It doesn't have like nutritional value that way in terms of energy. It just makes you feel less tired. So then you're not really like eating, cortisol keeps going up, going up. Then we have people who work out in the morning fasted, exercise also brings cortisol up. It's supposed to do that. It's, again, providing you with energy for your workouts. But then we just see this cortisol going up and up and up and up and up until you finally eat something, particularly carbs, or what's going to bring it down. But then you see most women who will just have a salad with a little bit of chicken for lunch, right? So then you have that 3 o'clock where like your body's finally like, okay, we're done, we're exhausted. And you start having these crazy like cravings for chips and donuts and chocolate and whatever else is in the office, right? Or you get home from work and you just eat everything in sight. And it's because you finally allow yourself to like rest a little bit and cortisol can come down a bit and your body's like, oh my gosh, we need energy now. That's when you have these crazy cravings. But if you aren't having breakfast, you're having coffee on an empty stomach, you're working out fasted in the mornings and you're just go, rushing through work, like you're just letting cortisol go completely unscathed throughout the entire day. And that's going to negatively impact your hormones, which is going to make your symptoms worse, which is going to make it harder to lose weight. And a lot of people don't realize that. And they're like, well, I'm not hungry in the morning. I thought I'm only supposed to eat when I'm hungry, right? Because it feels wrong to eat when you're not hungry because of all the intuitive eating stuff, right? But the difference is like you have to realize you can't trust your body's intuition because it's not functioning properly. The hormones aren't there to give it the right signals because you haven't been dealing with it properly for a very long time. So what we usually encourage women is like start really slow. Obviously, you're not going to have like a giant breakfast right off the hop when your body's not used to it. It's going to take time. So start with something small. Maybe it's just some yogurt and berries to start, and you start increasing what the portion size looks like. Then all of a sudden your appetite comes back. And this is when women message me completely freaking out. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry. What do I do? And I'm like, this is a good sign. Like this means your body is like ready for energy. It doesn't want cortisol to come up. Like your body is giving you the cues that it needs, which is really, really great. And it's not like uncontrollable hunger. It's just your appetite has come up, which is a really good sign, as opposed to like the uncontrollable cravings that you have in the afternoon after that energy crash, because your body just like needs it so badly, right? So this is again like a thing where this happens. Your body gets used to it. This is how your body functions. You've been fasting for years, and it's a really hard cycle to break, and it's scary, right?
Hmm. So I guess I wanted to just add in what is the sleep part of the equation in this as well, because I know that it has a big effect on just our ability to lose weight at any point in life, but especially during these particular phases as well.
Yeah, so sleep is really huge for a number of reasons. So when we're getting our deep sleep, our REM sleep, that good quality sleep, that's when our growth hormones actually increasing, which allows us to build and repair muscle mass. So if you're not getting good quality sleep, it's very hard. If you are someone who is having alcohol before bed and you think it helps you like fall asleep, your quality of sleep is actually worse. But if you're not getting enough sleep, your cortisol levels are naturally just going to start higher because you're not recovering as much. So your body is already starting out in a stress state, making it a lot more challenging to deal with the cravings and stuff like that. Like I actually paid attention on my Fitbit on quite a long time ago on what that kind of sweet spot was for me. And if I didn't get at least 6.5 hours of sleep, the amount of calories I would consume in a day was like an extra 400. Like it was crazy. I'm just looking for energy all day and the cravings
Those
just get
trackers
so
are great.
intense. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love them. It can give you a lot of information if you actually look back and like review it, right? A lot of people just have it and then don't really look back at it. But that helped me realize, okay, Steph, 7 hours of sleep. Otherwise, you were literally eating anything that you can get your hands on. But like in perimenopause and menopause in particular, when our hormone levels start to drop, what we can tolerate for stress decreases. So, because estrogen is a really good buffer for cortisol. So before you could handle like a 9 out of 10 on the stress scale, but estrogen goes down. So now it's only a 5 out of 10. So sleep becomes even more important. So before you might have been able to get away with fasting and skipping meals and low carb and killing yourself in the gym and not having a ton of sleep because your body's threshold for stress before things went sideways was a lot higher. Whereas now it takes a lot less. So you might notice that after a couple nights of poor sleep and skipping meals, like you feel out of control and your energy is poor and you just don't feel good. There's brain fog and the irritability. You feel more bloated. And that's because of these hormonal changes. So everyone's like, what I was doing before isn't working anymore. And it's like, yeah, because even though you feel like things haven't changed, internally things are changing. So the way we have to approach things is a lot less aggressively. We can't do those crazy diets anymore because our body just like cannot handle it.
Can I ask you about the nutrient creatine before we go?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
that's a really important, I think, in terms of muscle mass, building muscle.
Yeah, so creatine is great. It's super great for helping improve your gym performance, for muscle recovery, for improving your muscle mass and retaining muscle mass. Also, huge benefits cognitively. Like there are so many studies out there now that really show that it helps with cognition, all those kinds of things, which is great. So if you're someone who struggles with brain fog and memory, creatine is actually shown to be an incredible supplement for that. The only thing with creatine is that it will make the scale go up in terms of water retention. And this will freak out most women because what happens with creatine is it's going to pull water into your muscle bellies to help with the repair and all that kind of stuff to get you stronger, help you with building muscle, all that kind of good stuff. But that's going to have more water in your muscle belly. So it's not fat, it's water. But a lot of people, if they see the scale go up a couple pounds, they absolutely freak out. And if that's going to be that big of a deterrent for you, I don't think you should be weighing yourself, to be completely honest. But then it might not be something for you if you were going to be absolutely freaking out over every single slight increase in the scale just because of that, because that is a very common thing that we see.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, Steph, you've been fantastic. I'm really excited for you to give your information so people who may be struggling in this particular area can get to know you and get to see how you can actually help them out in this. So, can you give us your social media handles, your website, and all that good stuff so we can keep abreast of all the stuff that you're up to?
Yeah, so there's three best places to find me. So Instagram would be the first. It's vitalityoet.stephanie. We also have a wonderful podcast called the Metabolism and Menopause Podcast, that has like all things hormones, everything that you could ever want to know. We're always trying to find all the best solutions and information for you. And then lastly, we have a free Facebook group called Metabolism and Menopause by Vitality. And in there, we do webinars almost every single week. There are tons of free guides, support. There's over 19,000 women in there. It's a free community where you can access myself and a ton of resources. So if that is something that you're interested in, you can hop in there as well. Because I think my biggest thing is that there shouldn't be this big of a barrier of access to be able to understand your body and understand the changes that it's going through, and kind of sift through, quite honestly, all the crap that's out there. So we want to provide a place for you to be able to go and get all the information that you need, to do this on your own if that's something that you want to do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing all that great
Yeah.
stuff. And yeah, your community is huge and really looking forward to sharing, like, again, this with the audience so that they can jump in and join that as well.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having me. This was fantastic.
Really great to have you.
Yeah, definitely. All
Okay.
right, have a great rest of the night.
Take
You
care.
too. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of This Podcast Burns Fat. We're so excited to have you as a listener, and we're hoping that you really enjoyed the content as well. And if you did, please run over to iTunes and provide a rating and or review. It will go a long way in helping us continuously build our listenership up so that we can provide you with excellent content regarding fat loss, weight management, and just an overall healthy lifestyle. Thanks so much. Have a great night.